Blog Talk Radio.
Greetings, truth lovers from the Potter's House in Xenia, Ohio. Thanks for joining us for lunch this afternoon. And we are continuing in our series on the Gospel Project Bible Study, which is wildly popular in many evangelical churches today, particularly in Southern Baptist circles, as the Gospel Project Bible Study material is published, I believe, by Lifeway Publishers, which is mainly a very much into Southern Baptist circles as far as their publications. And the Gospel Project Bible Study is primarily focused towards our children. And why is that a bad thing? And what will it do in regard to transforming our children and forming their minds according to what exactly the Bible explains is a last days mentality. So that's what we're talking about, and this is the third part. And on the program page for today on paulspassingthoughts.com, I have posted the other two links for your convenience. Couple of items before we get along here and start our study today, which will be relatively short compared to the first two, I do believe. We'll see where it goes. If you would like to add to the program today with any comments, call 347 area code 855-8317. And one of the cool things about this Blog Talk Radio thing, /False Reformation, one of the cool things about it is you can listen to us on your cell phone. Just call in and it'll kind of automatically plug you right in, and especially if you have Bluetooth or something, you can listen to us while you're at work, and if you're allowed to, and during your lunch hour, and that's very cool. Now, I don't have a call screener, and we don't worry that much about screening people anyway. But there's a little trick to if you only want to listen to the show on your cell phone, but you don't want to be patched in to actually make a comment. We're not in the big time yet, so we only have a single line, okay? And so basically what you do is you hang up, all right, and then you call back later on in the show, and that will be my cue that you have not only been listening to the show or the program, but you also want to make a comment, okay? And then, of course, those who I see on the switchboard later on in the program, it's pretty obvious that that's somebody who wants to call in and make a comment. So that's how the whole cell phone thing works, or home phone. That's how that works. Per the usual, you may remain anonymous. When I patch you in and greet you and say, "This is Paul, what's your question or comment?" Just start talking, okay? Only identify yourself if you would like to. Now, I apologize because of our crazy schedule. Susan and I's crazy schedule. I fear that we're way too old to have the kind of schedules and busy life that we have. Nevertheless, it is what it is, and because of all of the craziness going on in our lives right now, Susan is not able to be a part of the program last week and this week, but we will rectify that in the near future. What else can I mention here? Yes, I wanted to remember, I'm so surprised I remembered this, but nevertheless I did. Look, because of our busyness, we do not have time to reply to all of the wonderful emails and comments that we've been getting from people quite a bit here of late. It seems that, what we're saying here at Tank Ministries and on Paul's Passing Thoughts blog, which is the blog for Tank Ministries, it just seems like what we're saying is really starting to hit home with folks, and we've been getting some really nice emails and text messages even, and people that were involved in this ministry years ago when I first started out in Paul's Passing Thoughts. Actually, before that, don't you dare Google it or try to find any of this material. I'll be mortified if you actually find it. But before paulspassingthoughts.com, I got my feet wet on this blog called Average Joe. All right, Average Joe blog or whatever, and don't you dare try to blog it or go back in time machine and try to find any of that material. As I said, I would be mortified. But way back in the beginning of Paul's Passing Thoughts, we had a little group of people, and some of them were on the editing committee of The Truth About New Calvinism. And, I forget that I've had the same email for a very long time, so from time to time I've been getting email from those folks, and even text messages, okay? And it is so much appreciated, just such a strong encouragement to Susan and I, and you can trust this to be sure. Just some days it's the encouragement that we need desperately. And it's just that as things are right now, with the number of people that we're counseling and so on and so forth, and everything else we've got going on in our lives, a lot of times I just don't have either time to reply or reply to the extent that I would like to. Nevertheless, we deeply appreciate it. What else can I mention here? During the program today, if you would like to add to it by email, email us at mail@ttanc.com. That's mail at Tony, Terry, Alice, NancyCat.com. Okay? And just email us, and I have my email monitor right here, and I will check it from time to time and see if anybody has come in and asked a question by email or has added a comment to the program today by email, and I will bring that up on the email and chime in on that. Okay. All right, and what else can I mention? Always go to tankpublishing.com, tankpublishing.com, TANC publishing.com. So truth about New Calvinism sometimes, or the truth about New Calvinism sometimes. So that way you know what the extra T is in some cases. But this is one T, tankpublishing.com, for all your heterodox needs. And we have a lot of material in there that you can purchase from us directly by writing to us at P.O. Box 583. That's Tank Ministries, P.O. Box 583, Xenia, Ohio, Xenia, Ohio 45385. Now, so that's tankpublishing.com. Also, just some quick informational thing, and we've got the websites up, kind of the basis of them, got it started, so I don't have to go into a lot of detail, but do start signing up and registering for our upcoming conference next year here at the Potter's House. Like I've said before, it's primarily an online affair, but it sure is nice to get a small contingency of people here to have a weekend of fellowship with. And there's 2 registrations there. And you can register. There's no cost involved, just registration. And we are holding it here at the Potter's House, and we're not going to go back to the community center till we start getting enough group here to where the Potter's House, there's just not enough room. But we have a monitored overflow room that's very comfortable. So we can take quite a few people here, but there's 2 different kinds of registrations. If you go to 2017.ttanc.com, there's 2 different kinds of registration. As room permits, you can register to stay here at the Potter's House free of charge. Okay? No room and board, no food charge. The only money you gotta come up with is the money to get yourself here and the money to get yourself back. And if we would happen to go out on the town away from the Potter's House, anything away from the Potter's House is Dutch. Okay? And so do register, and especially if you want to stay here free of charge. If you don't, there's lots of wonderful hotels. There's a Ramada Inn within walking distance, so on and so forth. And on both accounts, that is as room permits. And Susan and I, that's just a time that we set aside for fellowship and whatnot. And what a wonderful thing it would be for the friendships that we've developed online to come here and have fellowship and the bouncing around of ideas and challenging each other face to face. Okay, well then, I think enough of all of that, except for the fact that if you would like to support Susan and I in either prayer or monetarily for the our Susan and I's triannual endeavor in regard to evangelism, our evangelistic endeavor to the triannual cross conference. And this is kind of why I've etched things out of my schedule to do this series on the Gospel Project Bible Study, because this is our kids we're talking about, and with the cross conference, this is our youth that we're talking about. All right? And as long as I have breath, I am not going to let these people indoctrinate our children and our youth unfettered. Okay? I'm, you know, um, uh, you know, whatever I can do to at least slow down this vile indoctrination, I'm going to do it. And that's what this program is about today. And that's what the cross conference is about. Now, that website is 7questions.me. 7questions.me. It was in the past 7questions.org. I let that, we haven't re-upped that, that domain, and have instead changed it to 7questions.me. But you can, there are links to videos and whatnot of our first endeavor to the cross conference, and that was Louisville, Kentucky. And we have lots of video and information about that online. If you would like to get involved by prayer or contribution, or would like to go with us and be a support and actually take part physically in that endeavor in December of this year, do let us know, and just email us as well at mail@ttanc.com to mine or Susan's attention. And let me tell you something, Susan's psyched up for that. She's psyched up for that. She's ready to go. Now, before we get into our study today, I just want to throw a few thoughts out that I had. These are like rabbit tracks or rabbit trail. And no, I'm not going to play the bunny hop song, okay? But just some thoughts that I would like, and this is for free, just some asides, just some thoughts that I had this morning about this whole church discipline thing, okay? And it kind of plugs into what we're talking about, the choice that you have, whether you're going to interpret your reality grammatically, historical grammatical interpretation of reality, or historical redemptive perspective on reality. And we talked about that all last week. But let's think about something. Let's talk about this whole Matthew 18 church discipline thing. And again, church discipline, that term or anything like that is nowhere to be found in that text, by the way, in Matthew 18, I believe verses 15 through 20. But what it does say is go to that person alone to make sure there isn't any kind of misunderstanding here. See, if you go ahead and gossip about it, if you have a problem with somebody, and then it's kind of like a real big oopsie if you then end up talking to that person face to face and find out that it was all just a big misunderstanding, okay? Then what you really should do to make it all right is go back to all those people and correct the record. And that's just a hassle. So you go to that person alone, okay? So if you don't get anywhere, you take two witnesses with you, and or at least one other witness. And you know, if you're just kind of being thin-skinned about it, hopefully you pick one or two people who are wise to go with you. And then the situation kind of gets settled because they say, yeah, you know, let's talk about this, okay? I think that's something you can cover in love, all right? So then, but if it doesn't go that way, and it is a really very serious issue, and by the way, in none of this process, and again, I'm kind of doing this this afternoon because it's a good example of what we have to consider when we're going to choose how we want to interpret our reality in the Word of God, as discussed last week. So this is kind of segging into what we're talking about here, okay? And basically, if that all goes downhill, and again, notice that nowhere in this do you go to the elders. They're just not in there. Now, what a lot of these people try to do is make elders the church, which the word church in that passage isn't church to begin with. It's gathering, okay, or the called out gathering or whatever. All right. So basically, if it doesn't go well, you tell the church. And again, the word there isn't church. The word there is gathering. Okay, people gathered together for a specific purpose. Okay, and it says clearly then, if they will not hear, I'm just going to say church, you know what I mean. If they will not then hear the church, okay, let them be as like an unbeliever, so on and so forth. Now what happens in all cases in the institutional church where it comes time to, quote, tell the church? Well, first of all, there's no big argument. There's no bigger or better argument for home fellowships versus institutional church than this, because how do you, quote, tell it to a church of 5,000 people? Okay? All right? So because the institutional church doesn't work with the Word of God to begin with, orthodoxy has to kind of move the furniture around to make it fit. Okay? So in every case, what do we have? We have the elders getting up there and telling the church what they've decided to do. Right? But how do they make that work? Okay? How do they make that work? Well, here's how they make it work. The elders are in the authority, and they say that's the proper interpretation. But Mr. Elder, it doesn't say elder there, it says church. Oh, church means elder. How does that work? It works because I'm in authority, and I say so. Okay, and you you will now either prove yourself arrogant or humble, right? So that's what happens. You get the elders up there. Trust us. This person needs to be excommunicated. They have, and here it is. In every case, this is the terminology you're going to hear. They have long-standing sin. Long-standing sin. Okay? And you're just supposed to take their word for it. Okay? Now, you consider Matthew 18 in a small home fellowship setting, and all of a sudden the whole passage makes total sense. But you start trying to fit Matthew 18 into an institutional church setting, and man, you got to do a lot of redecorating. Okay? So that's what's at issue here. That's what's at issue here. What else can I say about this? Not much. I guess I'll move on from there. There was one other point I was going to make in that regard, but it has escaped me, and therefore we will move on. So, what we are going to predicate our lesson on today is, if you go to the Gospel Project, website, there's a promotional video on there. Okay, and I do hope, I've listened through this a couple times. Now, here's the thing. I have uploaded an audio file of this vid onto our radio program, okay? And the question here is can I stop this thing every time I want to make a point where it's at, or does it start over every time? Okay, that's the big question. And even if it doesn't, because I really don't have time to split this up into separate clips as I've done before, it's really not that big of a deal because it's only a minute 53. And you know what? It just won't hurt for us to listen to this thing more than once, okay? That way, I may get lots of emails of people pointing out things that I can add to it. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to go ahead and play it once through and let you listen to it, and then we're going to discuss it. Here we go. And in honor of James MacDonald, listen now.
One of my pastoral responsibilities within our church family is to provide leadership for our family ministries here at Calvary West. When we were selecting a curriculum to use in our children and student ministries, I noticed a lot of curriculums that taught good Bible stories and they taught good morality, but they failed to connect those things back to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And as a pastor, I want all of our kids and all of our students to know the root of what they believe and why they believe it.
Unless one is born again, everybody say born again. Born again. Okay. Unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God.
One of the dangers of teaching morality apart from rooting it in the gospel is that kids and students will grow up to be legalists. And that's one of my great fears in pastoral ministry, is that kids will learn how to look right on the outside without ever being transformed at the heart level. And the Gospel Project drives them down to the heart level to ask the deep questions of the faith. Why am I doing what I'm doing? So it's no longer just about doing the right things. It's about rooting that in the gospel, how God's love transforms them so that they can then live for Him and love Him and want to obey Him rather than feeling like they have to obey Him to be accepted. I'm thankful for the Gospel Project because it is pushing and driving our leaders and our kids and our students to trust in Jesus. I love that I can rest assured as a leader of these ministries knowing that week in and week out, when our kids and our students are in their classes, they are learning trustworthy, gospel-centered material that points them to Jesus Christ.
Okay, so there it is. And so we've given that a once through, a listen to. And I'm going to go back through now and kind of stop at each point and address it and connect this all back to what we discussed last week. Okay? And so let's give this a try. I don't think I'm going to be able to stop it where I want to and then continue on. So we're going to be rehashing what was said previously until we get up to the point I want to address where we stopped. And I apologize for that. Just no time to process this clip, this audio clip that I made from the online video and split it up into different segments. But again, it won't hurt. Listen, these guys are so nuanced in everything they say. The more you listen to this clip, the more you're going to pick up. Okay? And like I said, we talked about this last night, and I want to bring this back up. Orthodoxy has redefined, certainly, every biblical word that there is. And we talked about that last week. and really most of the English language as well. When people sit in church, most of these guys by no means mean the same thing that the parishioners sitting out in the congregation think they mean. So how does the indoctrination happen? Here's how the indoctrination happens. The teacher or the pastor who's teaching this stuff gets a pass due to assumptions. All right? What the congregation assumes they are saying prevents any kind of issues. Now, however, in using this verbiage, familiar terms and the redefinition of every Bible word that there is, certain parts of truth are going to be emphasized that mean different things than what is assumed and mean different things than what biblical truth means. And the balance to that is going to be left out. Okay? So it becomes out of sight, out of mind, and the people listening become indoctrinated by what's emphasized. Okay? Does that make sense? It's a formula. It's a tried and true formula of indoctrination. All right? So let me, here we go. And before we re-listen to this, okay, I think I'm going to save this letter to make final points as we go on. So here we go. Let's see where we go with this.
One of my pastoral responsibilities within our church family is to provide leadership for our family ministries here at Calvary West. When we were selecting a curriculum to use in our children and student ministry,
let's just stop right there. He says, this young pastor that's over this church, let's just address this point by point, okay? He says, one of their jobs is to supply leadership, okay, for the congregation. Let's just talk about this right now. What do we think when we think, let's just talk about this redefinition of the English language right now. When people hear it's their job to supply leadership to the congregation, what do people mainly think? Oh yeah, leadership, instruction. No. What they mean by leadership is authority. What is really happening and what their duty really is in their own minds is to supply authority to the congregation. The word authority is softened and nuanced with these replacement words. And you know what I'm going to do, by golly, and you ought to do it too. As this becomes reality, you ought to make a note of it. By golly, I'm going to start right now. Remember that chart we had last week where a reader asked me to make distinctions in the definitions, and I came up with some basic ones? Well, let's extend that chart. Let's do historical, grammatical method, HGM, and let's do HRM, and let's do the word leadership, okay? So under leadership, under HGM, that's going to be leadership, okay? Under HRM, what it really means is authority, okay? All they've done is replace the word authority with leadership. And listen to me. This is how these guys talk constantly. When you're standing in front of these fellows, okay, when you're standing in front of them or sitting in front of them and listening to them talk, everything that comes out of their mouth is replacement words and nuance, okay, period. Almost every word that comes out of their mouths is replacement words and nuance. Okay? And you're going to see this. Now, so that's that, and I didn't even expect to go there. So here we go. Let's do this. Let's keep on going with this thing.
One of my pastoral responsibilities within our church family is to provide leadership for our family ministries here at Calvary West. When we were selecting a curriculum to use in our children and student ministries, I noticed a lot of curriculums that taught good Bible stories and they taught good morality, but they...
Oh my goodness, are we ever going to get done with this? This needs to be spoken to. This third part may end up being another part. You know what? We're going to have a great time with this little 1 minute and 53 second clip, 2 minute clip. We're going to have a great experience with this. Okay? When him and the leaders selected materials. Wow. Let's talk about this. Whatever happened to the good old days when, quote, leaders, quote, unquote, presented their materials to the congregation from the Bible, from the Bible? You know, one of the major complaints that I get in emails and this, that, and the other, and what people want to know about, oh man, and it's happened so slowly, okay? But you go to the institutional church anymore, and nobody's teaching out of the Bible. It's some book that some Orthodox elder wrote. It's some book written by a Southern Baptist philosopher king. Okay? So when they selected material, why are you guys selecting anything? Okay? Why are you guys selecting anything at all? Why are... HGM alert. How does the Bible define an elder? Remember Peter in the book of Acts? They went to Peter because, you know, they wanted to go to the pastor, okay, about a problem. Now, what did Peter say? What are you guys bothering us with this? You know, here's a suggestion. Go out among you, pick 7 guys full of the Holy Spirit, and, report back to us, tell us how it turned out. Our job is prayer and the ministry of the what? The Word. Okay? Peter didn't say their minister was sifting through all of the Jewish sages to see what they wanted to present to God's people next. Okay? So, this brings me to another rabbit trail that I was going to go through earlier, but really didn't have a sufficient place to plug it in. Now I do. Excuse me. You husbands who come to Susan and I for counseling and say, you know, if my wife would just obey me, if she would just, and here it is, I say if my wife would only obey me. How they phrase it, because they've learned this well, if she'd only respect and follow my leadership, okay? If she would obey me, you know, everything would be fine. Well, here's a huge problem that we have. Okay? You don't want your wife to obey your leadership or to respect leadership as a Berean husband. You want your wife to obey what you've learned from the elders. You want your wife, because here's what you do. You go to church, first of all, you're stinking lazy, and you don't study the Bible for yourself, and you go to work all week, and I know it's hard, but you get all of your truth from Protestant orthodoxy, sitting in church every week and dragging your family to church every week. What you really want is for your wife to obey what you have learned from the elders. Okay, whatever that is. So enough with this "my wife doesn't obey me" routine. Okay? Because it's not your leadership. You're aping the so-called leadership that you get from the church elders who got it from whoever they listened to in seminary, and seminary got it from a bunch of old dead guys that were murdering mystic despots who came up with a government under a gospel under the auspices of a church state to begin with. And all you're doing is regurgitating a church state in your own home. And your children don't respect you, and your wife doesn't respect you, and you can't figure out why. And that's why. Okay? All right, so enough of that. Basically, when this guy said, this guy says, when we went out to select material, why are you selecting material? Okay, why are the elders getting together and surfing the net and Lifeway's catalog to figure out what material to present? Because it's orthodoxy. All Lifeway Publishers is an orthodoxy publishing company. That's all they are. And none of this stuff works. It was all formulated under a church state to begin with. It won't work. And the gospel's designed around a church state. It just won't work. Okay? All right, here we go. Oops. That is the wrong clip. Here we go. Let's try this again. Although
pastoral responsibilities within our church family is to provide leadership for our family ministries here at Calvary West. When we were selecting a curriculum to use in our children and student ministries, I noticed a lot of curriculums that taught good Bible stories and they taught good morality, but they failed to connect those things back to the gospel of Jesus Christ. And as a
okay, so there's lots of material out there. But a lot of it, and what he's talking about is a lot of the material that's still out there was from the confused Protestantism era, okay? And of course, as we know, as we've learned here at Tank Ministries, after the American Revolution, true Protestantism that came over the pond via the Puritans, okay, was confused by the American Revolution. And one of the things that was very confused was this whole matter of HGM versus HRM. And that's how Protestantism got confused, okay? Why? Because, back then in colonial times, communication wasn't what it is now, and